Hey everybody, welcome to The Hoop and the Harm, and we're finally settled on the last Western Conference Final Four teams. Minnesota's been waiting a little bit. Houston thought they could do it.
We have a problem.
Yeah. Game 7 was not even like, it wasn't, like it just felt like the moment it was going, the first quarter, the second quarter, it just felt like, okay, here we go, we're back again. Green acts crazy. Steph does Steph things, and Houston has nobody who's available, ready.
Green had the injury scare too, Jalen Green. So it was all like shaping up to be bad news for Houston from the jump.
And I think in basketball, why a 3-1 lead is so big, you have to expect a team to have 3 bad shooting nights, and in today's NBA, that's very, very unlikely, especially if you look at Golden State. And you say, oh, well, Golden State's going to have all of these poor games. That's just not even realistic when you look at the grand scheme of things. They did lose 2. Golden State had the 3-1 lead. They win in 7. They move on. I think we both picked Golden State.
We did.
And when we looked at this series, our biggest problem was who's the closer. We always go to who's the closer, and we all know who the closer is for Golden State. And it just didn't feel like Houston was going to take advantage of the situation, meaning that they weren't going to take advantage of the fact that you could have, no inside presence, as Golden State doesn't, and they played small ball, and Houston tried to beat them, and they just didn't.
No, it was, it was a huge step forward for Houston. I know it kind of feels like, they were the number 2 seed, right? And they were the number 2 seed by quite a lot. But this was not just any team that they were facing. They're not a typical number 2 seed. Everyone agrees they're ahead of schedule, and they weren't facing a typical number 7 seed. They were facing a legendary team. They were facing a team that has, iconic characters and absolute closers, especially Steph Curry. So if I'm a Houston fan, I'm bummed. I feel like it's a wasted season. I feel like it's like, are we actually going to be able to get back here next year? But at the same time, objectively, I think you have to look at it like we're making progress here. We brought Golden State to Game 7, and we've got plenty of tools to make up for it and better our roster and change things up, and they'll be back. Yeah,
the other thing in that I liked all of the conversations and the upsetness and the confidence, Green was showing and these other players about what that was going on. But at the end of the day, this Golden State team doesn't have a whole lot left. They added Butler, they added Curry. They don't have a lot of depth inside. It's been a problem. So if you were Golden State, I think you were hoping to face the Lakers. Then you were Minnesota. And if you're Minnesota,
definitely.
Well, you and I were talking about who kills off the old Giants. Well, Minnesota killed off LeBron James, and now Minnesota has the opportunity to kill off Steph Curry. And we both talked about that before the playoffs. What a great opportunity.
Your man Ant-Man is taking over that SGA role of being the killer to the legend killer.
I do think that should get more play. And I know it's not because the Lakers really got snuffed out pretty quickly, and everyone picked the Lakers. I imagine that everyone picked Golden State, which is why I was kind of cheering for Houston to take them.
Yeah.
My heart wanted Houston, but my head was like, this doesn't look that good. So when we look at the next series, the last one of all of the series that we have evaluated, Minnesota is now the home seed, the home 6 seed, because the 2 and the 3 are gone. Actually, OKC, if you were to reseed this, OKC would be playing Golden State. Denver would be playing Minnesota at home if we reseeded it the NBA, which we do not. So Denver plays OKC. You can see our show on that. Enjoy that. Minnesota now faces Golden State. To your point, this is not a 6 or 7. These teams were within a game. Just a couple stats for you before you get into who you like and don't like. Golden State won this series 3-1 pre-Butler. There was no Butler. The last time they played was in January. They only played 4 times in the year. I don't kind of comprehend how Western Conference teams only face each other 4 times, but this is the new schedule of the world. You get to see every player, every basketball team, even though you may not want to. So they faced 4 times. They never faced them with Butler. What are your thoughts? What are your initial reactions to this matchup?
Yeah, I mean that just kind of reaffirms what I was thinking. So I'll put it out there right away. I do think Minnesota wins this series. I am still picking them to win. I'm riding them as I believe you probably are too, as far as I can, because I've been really impressed by them and they seem to be clicking. But I've been thinking it's going to be a close series. I think it's going to be I think it's going to go 7 games.
Ooh.
Because I just don't see Golden State losing, more than 2 games in a row. I just don't see it. I think, if, and of course, I mean they could lose the first 2 and then win 1 and then lose the next 2, and then I really have egg on my face. But I just, with Golden State, with their backs against the wall, I think they're going to make any team. They're going to give any team a hard time because of what we saw last night against Houston, because Draymond is going to get into someone's head at some point. I can already see him, dreaming about, setting Randall off and bringing him back to some of his old ways. I know, he's going to go after Ant-Man. I don't think Ant-Man will be flappable at all, but he's going to try. And, he'll probably try to get Gobert into some foul trouble and things like that. So I just think all those combination of things, I just cannot see. As much as I like Minnesota, I think it's going to be a really tough series. I think they'll shine through, but it's going to be a tough series.
I think like the Lakers series, the difference here is Minnesota, very frustrating during the regular season, so I don't take the regular season at heart at all. They were an extremely frustrating team. Up and down, they were way better than what they showed in the regular season. That being said, when I look at this matchup, they had the same problem that the Lakers did. They have no interior presence. They're going to shoot 3-pointers. I think Minnesota has a good 3-point defense. I think they will let Curry do Curry things. I don't think Curry doesn't do Curry things. I think the biggest thing that they do a good job of is Minnesota's defense, in all reality, will let the big guys score their points. Houston was like, we're not going to let Curry beat us. Well, then the other guys eventually did. If you let Curry go, I mean, okay, make him get 60, make him get 50, make him be a superstar. He's too old, in my opinion, to do that for a 7-game series.
Yeah.
So if you were to say, like, we're going to isolate and let Ant-Man do Ant-Man things, Ant-Man is very young, and he can do that, and he's going to have off games like he did in Game 5, and they still won. So Minnesota's going to have good games and off games. I think that's true. Golden State's going to do the same thing. The question is, do they have the off games together, and who wins the off games? I trust Minnesota more in an off game than I do Golden State. That was clear to me in the series against Houston. If Golden State's not hitting their shots, they have no chance. I
do too.
I also think the size on the inside and how Minnesota plays them, with Reed, again, the X factor, with Gobert, you have Randall who gets to face up with Green. And the other thing that I will say is, you do not need Randall to be the guy. If he decides to fight Green, if both get kicked out of the game, who wins?
Yeah.
Minnesota wins.
It's true.
Minnesota's deeper. They need Green to stay in. So in all reality, if you're Minnesota, I don't know how this is going to go, but when you said you're excited this is an excitement for the Randall-Green matchup. And then you have Ant-Man in there as well, because who's stopping Ant-Man on their side?
No, nobody.
And then he gets to the rim. Who's stopping them at the rim?
I guess Butler's going to be guarding Ant-Man. I guess that's the matchup you're going to see.
Again, the one thing that I shouldn't say, Golden State, who's Curry matched up against? Because the other thing that they did a good job of is they didn't really play. They didn't play a true, like they did last year. Their point guard changes quite a bit, especially in crunch time.
I think you might see DiVincenzo on Curry a lot.
But I think Curry's on him now because Curry's defense has been lacking a little bit.
Oh, yeah.
So
I mean, it's never been great, but...
True, but I mean, you're trying to hide him. But that's the point is I think Minnesota upgraded at the end of the game with the trade with the Knicks. They just upgraded because they don't have the other point guard. I'm forgetting his name.
Conley?
Yes, because last year or even earlier, it was like Connolly was in at the end of the game. And if you noticed in the Lakers series, Connolly was not in at the end of the game, although he did hit the big three.
No, they're kind of going with no traditional point guard at the end of the game.
And it's worked really well because of Ant-Man's size, because he's so big, and because of what he can do. I agree with you about Minnesota. In fact, I get excited thinking about Minnesota and their path to the finals. I think the trade was really good, and I really, really liked what they did to the Lakers. I thought they would beat the Lakers in 7. They did it way more convincingly. I was impressed with their aggressiveness. I was impressed with with how they played defense and how they kind of didn't get pushed around.
And let me say, that's what I'm rooting for. Like, I hope they do take it to Golden State. I hope, it's sayonara after 4 or 5 games and... wow, Golden State just made this Jimmy Butler trade, and what are we doing now? I hope that's the conversation. I just think I have too much respect for Curry and as much as it pains me to say, Draymond and what they've done, and even Butler. Like I think Butler is renewed by this trade, and I think he is motivated to prove people that said he was cooked, wrong. Mm-hmm. But if and when Golden State loses, it'll be because they just don't have the depth. They do not have the horses that they used to have.
I agree. And if you listen,
Buddy Hield is not scoring 33 points in another game. I mean, maybe take that bet if you want, but like, you're just not. Maybe you get one really good game from Buddy Hield or something like that keeps him in it or something when everyone else isn't. But I don't see it happening on a consistent basis. As I've joked about, they have guys on the team that I never even heard of until right before the playoffs. You got Kuminga, who Steve Kerr forgets is on the roster, and is just for whatever reason is on the shortest rookie leash for a 4 or 5 year player or whatever he is at this point ever. So that'll be why they lose.
I feel like Minnesota trusts their depth more. I feel like Minnesota should trust their depth more. And the other thing that I noticed with Houston's team, especially Game 7 and the games they did lose, they were missing layups. They were missing really close shots without anyone. They were just missing important shots that they usually hit. Minnesota's not missing them. Those are dunks. The big guys on side are dunking the ball. They're not going to be like, oh, I need to lay this in and I'm going to miss layups all day long. And I also, there's just going to be a lot of area open. LeBron and Luka are bigger, even though they're not that great on defense. I look at Golden State and I look at Green, and when I watch them against Houston, I'm like, there's a lot of space against this team if you're Minnesota. And the one thing that I noticed with Minnesota, and this is just clogging the lane, they're long, they're quick, they react really well, they make you work it. Yes, Steph Curry can do a step-back 3, a pick and roll. He can get the guy he wants. Absolutely. At the end of a game, I see that. So for the viewing pleasure, Ant-Man versus Curry at the end of a game sounds really great. I wanted that with Luka and Ant-Man. That never really happened. It just turned out to be Ant-Man versus whoever was shooting for the Lakers because they got the ball. They got the ball out of his hand. So Minnesota, could they get the ball out of Curry's hand? Absolutely, they could get the ball out of his hand. And if you're going to ask me, if you're going to double Luka and he had problems getting out of the double team, you think Curry's going to have an easy time getting out of the double team? Minnesota is extremely long, and they're very aggressive.
Very physical.
So, they may have a game like they did in Game 5 where everybody has a bunch of fouls. That's possible. But the thing that I liked with Minnesota is everybody's got 4 fouls, and they're still fine. They got the depth they need. So the other thing that I mean, if you were telling me they need Randall to give him 25, so he shouldn't get into it with Green, I'd be like, no, get into it with Green. Get into it. Yeah. Get in Green's face, because I feel like Randall has kind of embraced that role of screaming, throwing people around, getting physical. Like, hey, this is...
As long as he does it smartly.
Do you think Green does it smartly? I think Green gets away with it.
I do, and I think Randall won't. That's what I'm worried about.
And
That's what I'm.
and
I'm worried that because I love Julius Randle, but I have PTSD from games where I won't go as far as say sabotaged, but like his play after being frustrated was detrimental to the team.
I understand as a Knicks fan you seeing that. My only point on that is if I look at this as a coach and I say, be smart, you get a tech, that's fine, whatever it may be. Green's gonna try to upset Randall. And I would be like, whatever. Like, he's not Karl Malone. You know what I mean? He's not the guy. Like, when Dennis Rodman upset Karl Malone, he hurt your whole team because the whole offense ran through him. Right. Green's not going to upset Ant-Man. That's not even a realistic outcome at all.
No.
He's going to try to do things with Gobert. He's going to try to do things with Julius Randle. Minnesota's already seen all these acts. And that's the other thing about Green is he's on the very tail end of his career. You're going to let this guy on the tail end of his career do crazy things and throw you off your game? I just think that's silly.
I do think it worked a little bit against Houston.
But the only reason why I think it worked against Houston is that Houston was trying to be something they weren't. What they should have been is just go score more.
And Houston, I think, was a little bit starstruck. I think they were a little bit like, again, they were like, wow, we're the 2 seed. We're playing at home in Game 7, and so there's that. And to the other point of that is that Minnesota is hungry because you got all those guys from last year that remember what happened.
Yep.
That know how it went down, and then you got the 2 new guys, Randall and DiVincenzo, who have for different reasons, have a bad taste in their mouth from the way their playoff experience.
I do feel that way. I feel like that there's that hunger that I don't see. Like Golden State, I felt when I listened to Steve Kerr, it was kind of like a sigh of relief, like, oh, this was really an accomplishment. And then I was like, if Minnesota played Houston, they would not be acting that way. They'd be like, next one up. Remember the end of the Lakers game? The high fives they were getting? And they were like, let's go. We got next one. We got to go to the next one. Because everyone, last year, they got to the Western Conference Finals, and they flared out after they beat Denver.
Yep.
And they looked exhausted. They didn't look like themselves. It blew me away. And I think that has stuck in their head of we're not going to tire out this time. And you can see that. There's like that sense of like that brotherhood amongst them about like this is our time. We have to do this. So I'm expecting them to show up. I'm expecting Game 1 to go Minnesota's way. I'm expecting Golden State to be tired for them to show the tiredness. They just went to Houston. Now they're going to Minnesota. No longer do you have a 3-day off anymore. It's every other game. Right. So then you have like Steph Curry's going to get beat up a little bit. These guys are not the same. They're not as young. Butler's not a young kid either. So I like Minnesota. I like the way the team's put together. I think they're a lock for the Western Conference Finals. I have this in 5. I have this in 5.
Wow.
I just think that, to me, it looked like Golden State did all they could do. We beat Houston. We upset a team. We're pretty excited. That 3-1, losing Game 6 at home, I thought was a big deal. It's a big deal for them because it went, then you go to Houston. Now they're playing on, what is it? I believe they play tomorrow or Wednesday.
I think they play tomorrow. I think they play Tuesday night, tomorrow night.
So they played Sunday night. Yeah, because there's 2 games tonight, 2 games tomorrow. So they are done with 2 days off. So that Game 6 loss hurt them because they then played 2 games, traveled to Houston. Now they travel either home or to Minnesota right away, and they play every other night in the rest of the series. Mm-hmm. And if you were to say, who's ready? Minnesota's been waiting. I feel Minnesota's hungrier. Minnesota wants this. I would expect a Minnesota victory here in 5.
And you never really know until they get on the floor and you see it play out about, what's better, right? Rest or like having the momentum of having just played. I think this is a clear, again, I don't know for sure, but this to me seems like a clear example of when a team would be, like Minnesota getting rest and it just doesn't bode well for Golden State.
And Minnesota's half-court offense is so much better than Houston's.
Yes.
So Golden State went to 7 against a team that doesn't even have a good half-court offense.
It's true.
So, like, when I look at Houston compared to Minnesota, it's like now you're going to face, in my opinion, an elite half-court offense, and you're going to have to face them, and you're going to play small in hopes that you make Minnesota play small. And I'm like, I don't think that's going to fly very long. I mean, you got to hit all your threes.
And with that, the offense, like Houston, I think is still trying to figure out who they are. I think they're still trying to figure out their identity as far as like, is this Jalen Green's team? Is this Amen Thompson's team? Is this Şengün's team? We know whose team Minnesota is.
Oh, there's no doubt.
Everybody knows their role on that team.
And I think that really helps the whole team. Golden State has the similar thing that everyone knows their role. I think the other thing when I looked at Houston, they need more coaching up. They need their players, to buy into the fact that you need a really good system in the playoffs on a half-court set. You can't just rely on your individual merits. I know everyone thinks that Ant-Man relies on his individual merit, and I love the line that Reed said, or I can't remember, it was Randall. They were like, Ant-Man had a terrible game 5. He was off. He wasn't shooting well. And they go, no, he made every correct read. Every pass was right. Every shot he took was right. He made all the right reads. He's the guy because he makes all the right reads. So that means if you go back and look at the film room, they're teaching Ant-Man to do the things that he was talking about. Make the right passes, find the right open player, get the best shot. So he's not forcing it. I go back to how he's playing, how he's controlled when he's jumping, how he's controlled when he's evaluating the first and second and third quarters to kind of feel out a game. That basketball maturity is really taking place, and we get to witness that. I don't want to see that go away, so I'm cheering for them, but I do think Minnesota is just the better team.
Yeah. No, I have no doubt about that. You're making me feel like maybe I should have said 6 instead of 7, but I said 7 to start with. I'm going to stick with it. I think unfortunately, we'll see a Curry game where he just looks unstoppable again.
Absolutely.
I think we'll see them take advantage of a rare mental lapse or two between Minnesota and quote unquote steal a game.
Yep.
So I don't feel great about it, but I'll stick with my call that Minnesota wins this in 7 games.
You have Minnesota in 7. I have Minnesota in 5. I feel really good about Minnesota. You feel good about Minnesota. Let's hope we have a great series, and basketball fans win in all accounts. As always, I'm your host, Brendan, and that is Nolan for Hoop and the Harm. I wish you nothing but the best of luck for the Knicks. Please subscribe, please like, and thank you, everybody, for joining us on our playoff and off-season journey. Everybody, have a great night.
All right.